us here tonight because you are taking time out from your schedule, and I deeply appreciate it. I am Gale Brewer. I am the Manhattan Borough President, and in a few minutes I'll introduce the wonderful people here with me. I do want to thank Hunter College Social Work for providing us with space, and City Limit Magazine for live streaming this proceeding. It is live streamed. We'll also be recording the meeting, and we'll post it on our video on our website, along with a transcription of the oral testimony. And if you send something in because you don't have it with you, we will also include it. We're very serious about listening to your views on two proposals that would have far-reaching impacts on the future of East Harlem. You know that one is moving through a review process now, and the Office of the Manhattan Borough President has an advisory role and will provide an opinion on the proposal. We do spend a lot of time in our office on land use and rezoning, but having been in the City Council for 12 years, as you know, the City Council does have the final say. That's exactly what it is. The first proposal is an application by the Department of City Planning, as you know, to rezone 96 blocks in East Harlem with the aim of spurring new housing development, affordable to whom is always the question, but affordable, and to create new affordable housing units of various income tiers. The application also proposed the application of mandatory inclusionary housing. As you know, the application is also promoting the creation and preservation, very important, of new job-generating commercial and industrial space in the rezoning. And as somebody who spends a great deal of time supporting mom and pop and owner-operated stores and hates chain stores, I hope you can help us think about those issues. The East Harlem rezoning proposal by the city is in response to the neighborhood plan delivered to the city in February 2016 by the East Harlem Neighborhood Steering Committee. Some of you are on that committee. We were proud to be a project partner in that process, convened by Speaker Melissa Mark Riverito and co-led by Community Board Levin and Community Voices Heard. The plan we drafted collaboratively with a steering committee of 21 community partners and diverse, was an inclusive and detailed vision for the neighborhood that has already been instrumental in guiding public investment in East Harlem. There are significant differences between the neighborhood plan and the city's proposed rezoning. Let me make that very clear. There are great differences between the neighborhood plan, which the steering committee came up with, and the city's proposed rezoning, many of which were first identified in joint comments submitted by the steering committee at the public hearing for the draft scope of work. And I think many of us here still have those issues, and we're not satisfied with the answers we have received from the city. The second proposal, not as major, is a separate proposed mixed-use development to be built on the full block of East 111th Street between Park and Madison. This is one of the last city-owned parcels of this size in East Harlem. Because of that, I believe that if this proposal moves forward, there needs to be a consensus that the final product enhances and supports local neighborhood needs. From both partners in the neighborhood planning process and from residents throughout the neighborhood, I have heard that there are many concerns and questions about the city's proposal, and many which I share. Those of you who know me know that I share them. During the limited time left in our review period in the Borough President's office, we will be working to get answers to your questions and to ours. One factor that we are taking into account is a research on the number of affordable units lost and projected to be lost in East Harlem. I know in Manhattan over the last decade, just on rent stabilization alone, we've lost almost 150,000 units. That's just in rent stabilization, doesn't include Section 8 or other HUD buildings. This is something that we can all agree is a tremendous issue that needs to be tackled, and regardless of our position on the appropriate strategy, we have to tackle this issue. We cannot lose any more affordable housing from a preservation perspective. I want to make sure to mention that I know that there are attendees that may have individual questions on issues that require immediate help. And we have a constituent office on 125th Street between Amsterdam and Morningside. We're the first borough president to have a street front, not in a tall building. And then there are staff members from our office here. And we have some agencies here. I want to thank the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs for having a table here, the Tenant Support Unit and staff from HPD. If you have questions about specific individual housing issues, please ask them. If you need translation assistance, be advised that outside of the auditorium, there's a table where you can receive a headset and follow along with simultaneous translation. In a minute, Deputy Borough President Alden Bonillo can be more specific. We have an ASL interpreter for those who are hearing impaired, located at the edge of the stage to my left. I also want to thank the Department of City Planning and other city agencies for being here tonight. We have in the Borough President's office until August 2nd to make a recommendation, just so you know. So tonight is an opportunity for all of us here to hear from you about these applications. We really, really do welcome you to have comments, and we will have additional testimony. We will take questions up until July 24th, but even later if appropriate. I do thank you all for coming. I want to also thank the Mayor's Office for being here, representative of Senator Serrano, and a representative of Assemblymember Rodriguez, all for being here. And now I'd like to turn it over to Deputy Borough President Alden Bonillo for a few comments.
Gracias. Buenas noches. Simplemente quiero añadir que si necesitan el equipo para la traducción en español, atrás, por esa puerta, pueden, they have their hands up, tienen la mano alzada, pueden buscar el equipo de traducción allá atrás. Gracias.
And now we'll hear from General Counsel Jim Karras.
Thank you. Just the basic ground rules. Each witness will have 2 minutes to testify. We're going to call 3 people at a time in the order that people signed in. Ask them to take seats right here. Then if the first person called would get up and speak at the mic and the others remain seated, when that person is done, then the next person gets up and so on. And that's also so we have staff, land use staff will be taking notes on people's issues. We take these very much into consideration as we draft our recommendation. So we really want to be able to hear what everyone says. Thank you. The first group of 3, Ray Rogers, Lynn Lewis, and Marina Ortiz.
And I'm probably not supposed to say this, but I love the signs. Good evening.
Hi. Oh, okay. My name is Ray Rogers.
Is the
mic on?
No.
I think you called my name first.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll tell you from the microphone.
And I understand we have 2 minutes?
Yep.
Okay, ready to go?
Ready?
All right.
Ready to go.
Okay, one of the things that has bothered me, and I've been to these community board meetings, and I see the anger and the frustration and the fear of so many people who know they're going to be dislocated over these rezoning policies. And people talk about the mayor's policy and the city council policy. I want people to understand these rezoning policies are not the mayor's and they're not the city council's. They're the Real Estate Board of New York, REBNY. They tell the mayor and the city council what the rezoning policies are going to be. And those policies about making billionaire bullies and racketeers, which are the people that run REBNY, a lot richer. And a lot of the poor and working class people a lot poorer. I want to make that real clear. When my 2 minutes is up, just tell me, okay? Let's take a look at who's the head up REBNY. Well, you see a little brochure I've been handing out here. And there's a website on it. Go to it. We did a 5-minute animated film on REBNY called Bullies. 5 of the people you look at in here are leaders on the executive board of REBNY. Tishman Spire, Rob Spire. He's the one that went out. He should be in jail. Okay? He cheated thousands of people out of the rent-stabilized apartments, and he tried to steal to turn, the Peter Cooper Village in Stuyvesant Town into expensive condos. That man should be in jail. He's out in Long Island City now. He's got $200 million in tax abatements. I call it corporate welfare. To build 18,000 units in these 3 high-rises. Because of a loophole in the law, 421A law, he's going to keep the $200 million, but there's going to be no affordable apartments in those buildings. It's all here in the brochure. Jed Walentis, the guy that built up Dumbo, he's another crook. I've seen firsthand how he's cheated people in rent-stabilized apartments, tried to force them out in Brooklyn at 125 Court Street, and how he wouldn't do repairs. And I saw the terrible working conditions of people in the property. I got 30 seconds left. Okay, then let's look at a couple more. Again, look at this brochure. I hope you'll read it. Gary Barnett, the man who created the poor doors. So that when you had affordable housing, we don't want any blacks, Latinos, or poor whites to go in there with the richer people. No, they got their own poor doors. Thankfully, that was outlawed. Okay, my time? Okay, and then of course, just let me add, Slumlord Daniel Brodsky, let's not leave him out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Lewis. I'm a resident of El Barrio. I've been living here for 18 years, raised my children here. And Gail, we need, if I can call you Gail, we need your leadership on this, because this rezoning has been sold to neighborhoods all over the city as a done deal. A lot of folks don't think there's anything that can be done to stop it, like it's a train, and we need you to stand up for us. El Barrio is already undergoing rampant gentrification. The rezoning is going to exacerbate that and make it worse, both with residential and commercial. Residential rents have doubled over the past 10 years. My own children, both college graduates, could not find an apartment in this neighborhood to live in, and nearly everybody that I know in the neighborhood that I talk to that has children has the same concerns. Because once families are separated, there goes the community. We were told by HPD over a year ago that it was unreasonable to ask for housing to be preserved and created for people making less than 30% of area median income, which is the majority of people here in this neighborhood. How can it be unreasonable for publicly funded urban renewal to not take into account the people that live in a community? Being told that it's unreasonable and unrealistic is like saying, you don't belong in our new El Barrio. You don't belong in our new New York City. We don't believe that that's how you see things. And we need you to stand up for that. There's alternative models that people in the neighborhood have created. We have an El Barrio Community Land Trust. We've been in negotiations with the city to receive city-owned property. There are many vacant lots that were not included in the East Harlem neighborhood plan. There are many, many dilapidated city-owned buildings in this neighborhood that would benefit from being on a community land trust. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. First of all, thank you very much. One question is, I just want to hear a little bit more about some of your preservation ideas, because that, to me, is as important as anything that would be forward. So can you just expand just a tiny bit on this issue? Because we are nervous about losing more rent-regulated HUD, HDFC, et cetera.
Yeah, and I share that. I live in a rent-stabilized apartment. That was a failed HDFC and was illegally bought by a landlord who built a high-rise across the street from me on 118 and 2nd Avenue. So the pressures of gentrification that will be exacerbated by the rezoning are going to make it even harder for people to walk away from somebody saying, here's $50,000 for your apartment. Where the land trust can fit in terms of preservation is we've been working with the city, I won't say very closely, but engaged with the city to get city-owned buildings that were part of the TIL program, as well as other city programs that aren't in any particular program that have tenants living in them. Many of them in horrendous conditions because the buildings were never rehabilitated. So those buildings by themselves are difficult to make financial financially viable. If you have a 10-unit building, a 15-unit building, whether it's a TIL or it becomes an HDFC or whatever program it's in 20 years is going to need a new boiler. It's going to need a new roof. And the people that live there, if it's an HDFC, have to pay for it. The rising oil costs really harmed a lot of HDFCs. And so bundling multiple buildings together to form a larger scale co-op through a mutual housing association can achieve economy of scale that a building by itself can't do and can't be viable on its own. So there's very successful models of this down on the Lower East Side, Cooper Square. They've been very helpful in crafting our own plan here. HDFCs that are in distress, and there are many that owe over $500,000 in water bills and taxes, they can have that debt restructured, and HPD will go along with it if they restructure their governance, which could also include being on a community land trust.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all.
Okay, all right.
Hi, good evening. I was going to make a joke about I've never seen so many suits in East Harlem at one time in one place, but I'm glad a lot of other people have come in since then. So, Gail, I prepared my statement for 3 minutes like we normally get at the community board, so I'm going to take that 3 minutes.
Go ahead.
We want your support. We want you to help us save our beloved East Harlem, just like when you fought for your West Side neighborhood back in the day. We want you to join us in objecting to the city's plan to gentrify this community with a middle-class housing plan that does not fit our needs. We're tired of all the plan-splaining, as Sam Stein so eloquently describes it. We do understand MIH, ZQA, NFAR, but for us, those acronyms stand for Missing in Harlem, Zero Quality Assurance, and Favor All Realtors. We have crunched the numbers, but the math doesn't add up. We have looked at the big picture, and we clearly see that it doesn't include us. Just one simple example, 30% AMI means zero new housing for low-income and homeless people here in East Harlem. So even setting aside 25%, it's still zero. Peter Minuet once boasted that he acquired the island of Manhattan by paying off the locals with a few trinkets. And ironically, the city now would have us trade one of the last relatively affordable communities in Manhattan for the promise of a few token apartments. This community was founded as an affordable haven for low-income people. Most of the immigrant groups that settled here elected to leave. But poor Black and brown residents today don't really have that privilege. We are the descendants of Seneca Village, people driven from their homes by the developers of Central Park. We are the Puerto Rican diaspora, once again being exiled by hedge fund companies and U.S. developers. We are Central and South American immigrants seeking sanctuary in this land of opportunity. This city and country was founded on the violent displacement of people of color. We cannot and will not let it happen again. The media likes to call us activists, anyone who opposes rezoning, leftist thugs. But you know what's really extreme? Racist rezoning of low-income communities of color. That's what's extreme. 35-story, mostly market-rate skyscrapers all along 3rd Avenue, that's extreme. Being displaced at the rate of 4 or even 3 to 1 through 20 and 25% set-asides, that's extreme. The mayor recently said he finds people asking for money disconcerting. But you know what's really off-putting? Urban renewal programs, which James Baldwin called Negro removal, and today we call ethnic cleansing programs, like the ones that are being proposed, that's what's off-putting. Encouraging massive increases in the number of high-priced properties in low-income communities and calling it desegregation, that's off-putting. Losing our cultural legacy and hard-earned voting power, that's off-putting. I am here because Asada taught me that it's our duty to fight for our freedom, it's our duty to win. We must love and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains, Gail. I'm here because my mentor, Esperanza Martel, with whom you've worked for many years, taught me that it's about creating possibilities and making the impossible happen. Gale Brewer, you do have the power to just say no to any rezoning. You can help us put an end to this charade. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next three people to come up to the front, Stephen Switzer, Marcel, excuse me, the handwriting's a little hard to read, Negret, and Carla Reyes.
Susan, is Susan there?
Marcel?
Susan. She said Susan.
What's the first name?
Stephen Switzer, Marcel, I think it's Negret, maybe Net, and Carla Reyes.
All right, so Stephen?
If you'd come up, take seats in the front, and then the first, Stephen can stand at the microphone.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm honored to be here. My attachment to the neighborhood is through Reverend Domingo Vasquez of Friendly Hands Ministry around the corner on 118th Street. And I've been working with him for the last 3 years. And I've been trying to develop an idea of how to sustain the neighborhood and bring skills to the people in the neighborhood that they can be independent. Last year, I worked on the RFP on East 111th Street. We did the sustainability part of green energy called Passive House. So there's a lot of flack in the neighborhood. You don't need these tremendous big buildings to overshadow everyone. And affordable, like you said, affordable for who? At the same time, I personally believe in divinity, that the land tells you what to do. There's a Little League there for many, many years. It would be a shame to lose it. So I came up with an idea how to keep what's there and add on to it. I reached out to Eva Moskowitz from Sussex Academy.
Not my favorite, but okay.
Well, in this case, she should be. So she has a school a block away, right?
Yes, I know.
Okay. So she'd be willing to have a high school built on the Park Avenue side. That would enable the garden.
I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it.
That would enable the gardens to remain, but instead of 4 gardens, it will be consolidated into 1 garden. The Little League field would then be shared with the high school, and the Little League would still have access to it, full use. On the Madison Avenue side would be the apartments. So probably 250 apartments. We would need a variance from R7 like to R9. And so you would have apartments, either affordable or a mixture, that the note could be paid. The baseball field would remain, and the gardens would remain, plus the high school.
Okay. Thank you very much. I know that I'm a big public school advocate, but I appreciate everything else you said.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Marcel?
Good evening. My name is Marcel Negret. That's Romanian, but I'm actually Colombian. Anyway, I'm a project manager at the Municipal Art Society of New York. MAS has a number of concerns that we urge the city to address before we can support the East Harlem rezoning proposal. We are apprehensive about issues specific to East Harlem, including the undercounting of available development sites, potential displacement of local residents, and lack of consideration for shadow impacts and public space needs, as well as other broader matters of long-term affordability and preservation of the existing units. Due to time constraints, I will only comment on the sites excluded from the selected, projected, and potential development sites, but I will be submitting a full testimony that comments on other issues.
Thank you.
The reasonable worst-case development scenario, which is the framework of the draft environmental impact statement analysis, does not accurately represent the utmost projection of potential development under the zoning proposal and could affect the accurate evaluation of its socioeconomic impacts. The rezoning has 521 multifamily residential buildings that are underbuilt based on current zoning. This brings to light concerns that the rezoning, by increasing the level of density, would put additional redevelopment pressure on these sites. The EIS identifies over 100 projected and potential development sites within the reasonable worst case development scenario. And this excludes 66% of the aforementioned underbuilt residential buildings. While there might be reasonable arguments for excluding some of these underbuilt multifamily buildings, such as lots with ongoing construction activity, the city's calculation may be underestimating future development facilitated by the rezoning. To provide an accurate analysis of potential residential displacement, MAS recommends that the final EIS be amended to include underbuilt properties with rent-stabilized units as part of the criteria for selecting development sites, or at least provide an alternate analysis that includes these properties in the reasonable worst-case development scenario. As I said, we're submitting a full version of the testimony, and we're also making the maps and data sets utilized for this analysis available on our blog section and at mas.org.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have questions. I'm a questioner.
Yes.
So my question is, first of all, MAS, thank you for being here. You have a wonderful board and staff, and you do come up with some good ideas. You heard earlier about how do we both preserve and create, land trusts or other ideas for preserving the current housing. At the same time, we have a lot of, new residents coming to the borough of Manhattan. So in your testimony, you seem to be stating that you're concerned about the density, right? And you're concerned about how the zoning is going. I just didn't know if you wanted to summarize a little bit more, maybe some of the things that you didn't mention due to time constraints.
So one other thing that I was hoping to mention is that a lot of these size underbuilt properties contain a number of rent-stabilized units, and so those units are not counted under the EIS. And so what we're saying is that the projections of the EIS for the potential residential displacement are being underestimated, greatly underestimated. And so what we're saying is that the EIS is
faulty.
Exactly.
Faulty.
And I agree, there's other ideas that we comment regarding the draft housing plan, ideas that we find that are very promising, but are, as we understand, are in exploratory or pilot phases. Mm-hmm. And then these should be fast-tracked before the rezoning moves ahead. And you mentioned the community land trust models, but also the expansion of legal representation. And I think most importantly, the execution of the certificate of no harassment.
That would be very important, like exists in the Clinton Special District.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That was helpful.
Ms. Reyes?
Sorry. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Carla Reyes, and I've been a teacher here in East Harlem on 117th between 1st and 2nd for 6 years, public school teacher, special education. I've been the UFT chapter leader for the past 2 years, Go Unions. I have to talk about public schools when we talk about rezoning, because rezoning means removal, and who are we removing? A lot of schools in East Harlem, which you probably know, in District 4, are under-enrolled because there's an overpopulation of charter schools in the area, and we're basically competing for the same kids. Now, there's no lack of students. There's kids everywhere, right, when you're running around. But it's all under enrollment, and teachers are getting excessed, which means, if you don't know, accessing that there's no more money in the budget for teachers anymore. And a couple of special education teachers got accessed at my school, which then means that they don't have jobs and that the students don't have services. And we know charter schools are not servicing students. Now, why does this matter when we talk about rezoning? Because rezoning deprioritizes our kids. That lot on 112th that now is sold to developers but will no longer be for students to go, that hurts our kids. Chico last year in March, for those of you who know, in Jefferson Houses, was shot and killed. And how many many programs, how many after-school programs could save our students if we prioritize our money there instead of giving it to developers so that they could then displace our people? And where are we supposed to go? This is happening all over the city. It's happening in the Bronx, it's happening in Queens, it's happening in Chinatown, it's happening everywhere. And the only way that people have ever achieved any type of change in this country has been when they united. And that's how public housing came to be in the first place, when people united and fought for it. So I invite you all to fight with us, say no, and we'll continue the struggle for public and affordable and quality housing for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much thank you for being a great teacher.
Gammy Alvarez can take a spot at the mic. Is it Gabby? Yeah. Gammy, okay. Althea York. Althea York can take a seat up there, and Andra Perez as well.
Okay. I'll let you go first. Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Gammy Alvarez, and I've grown up in New York City my whole life, lived here, and I've had to move around a lot because of gentrification. And I'm fighting with other young people who do not have to worry, I am fighting so other young people do not have to worry about where they are living. So other families, like my families, do not need to worry about where they're gonna live, don't need to worry about losing their homes. That's why I organized with the Justice Center in El Barrio. Shut up. Rezoning 96 blocks in East Harlem means displacing families within those 96 blocks. Rezoning means removal. It not only flips buildings, but flips the entire neighborhoods upside down. You think that it'll make the neighborhood better and nicer with more services, but better for who? We've all seen the Pathmark close last year, and it was one of the biggest grocery stores in El Barrio. If these so-called representatives can't even guarantee a basic food supply for the people of El Barrio after their speeches about food deserts and whatever, what should give us any confidence you will protect our places to live? That's right. We all need food, clothes, and shelter. But you've already taken our food, and now you're trying to take our shelters, trying to remove us from our homes. I'm part of the Justice Center and part of the Party for Socialism and Liberation because I know that the way that housing rights have ever been won is when tenants and poor people, working class people, come together and demand justice, things will change. That's the type of force that created public housing to begin with. We have to come together and reclaim our real power. Right now, the developers think they have all the power because they fund all the politicians and write the rules, but we have power too. When we change ourselves, then all these politicians are gonna either have to follow what the people want or get out of the way. El barrio no se venden.
Thank you very much.
Althea York.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Althea York, and I'm a member of Picture the Homeless and a former resident of East Harlem. I lived at 225 East 96th Street, and I had to leave due to an emergency in 1979 after living there 18 years. And when I came back to New York, everything has changed. The landlord, I don't know what pull he had, but his 4 buildings are the only one on the block still, plus the mosque. Everything around there is high-rise that we cannot afford anymore. The last time I checked, only one person that used to live in the building across from me, his apartment, was still living there. And I guess he might be going through hell right now. This was only possible because when I lived on 96th Street, was zoned for building much taller than areas north of it, while my street was zoned R10. The street just north of mine and most of East Harlem is zoned only R7. I don't want to see what happened in Lower East Harlem happen to Upper East Harlem. Then everyone will be displaced like I am. Today I live in the Bronx, but I want to move back to East Harlem. What has been done in East Harlem is preposterous. It's nothing about the culture, the market that we used to enjoy on weekends from 110th Street to 125th. You could get everything there, clothing, food. People used to come from Brooklyn, Queens, all over to go to that market. Plus, it had this restaurant on 116th Street. You could get the best paella there. None of those cultural things are there. The movie house on 103rd Street is not there anymore. But what they want the residents to do now in East Harlem. You know, so to preserve our culture of East Harlem, please vote no, against this rezoning.
Okay.
Thank
you very much. Excellent testimony. Thank you.
Mr. Perez?
I used to get all my chickens at La Marqueta.
My name is Andra Perez, and I'm a member of Picture Homes. I used to be homeless a few years back. I'm also a single parent raising a 17-year-old son. We lived at a homeless shelter for 2 years before I found a permanent housing on the Lower East Side. I'm asking the borough president to vote no against the rezoning and with no conditions. I'm testifying today because I feel that there are a lot of families who don't have adequate funding to pay the rent that is in the market these days. They are living on fixed income such as Social Security, disability, or receiving public assistance. I personally receive public assistance income, not disability. We only receive $138 every 2 weeks towards rent, which covers $277 per month. That is simply not enough to keep up the rents in the housing market. There should be some kind of low-income housing for families who aren't making enough to afford the cost of housing these days. And in this market, through my knowledge and work with various organizations such as Picture the Homeless, Banana Kelly, and Community Voices Heard, I've learned a lot about what a rezoning does. And under my understanding, this rezoning won't make a good thing for families who can't afford the rent, and that the rents will increase after their families move out. Therefore, I believe that it would be a better choice to renovate housing in the community than rezoning and displacing families, individuals out of their neighborhood. I'm here because I believe this rezoning will result in more people being displaced in homeless shelters. I experienced the shelter system both before and after I had a child. I want to do everything I can do to make sure no one else has to have this experience. If we are continuing to allow the system to allocate for us, where are we going to go? Where are we going to live? We need to be able to allocate for ourselves. We all need to gather together, stand up and fight back against this rezoning. Instead of giving these rich developers funding to build high-rise condominiums, I would prefer that we allocate that funding to rebuild the community by building more housing, perhaps parks and gardens and libraries. That would be a better resource for the people in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next three witnesses, Jarkay Abdullah can take a position at the mic. Vivica Diaz can have a seat, and Ray Tirado.
Go ahead. Yep, thank you.
My name is Jarkay Abdullah, better known as Jermaine. I'm a member of Picture the Homeless. I'm a member of the Safety Net Activists, which is under the Urban Justice Center, and I'm also an appointed member to Community Board 11. I I would like for Gale Brewer to vote no on the rezoning with no conditions, just no, which was not one of the options at the community board vote.
That's right.
Everyone who I heard speak at the community board was against the rezoning, even with conditions, but still it went forward, and most of the community board voted no with conditions. Saying no with conditions is like saying yes to a rezoning, but we want a few extra things with it. And this massive rezoning is not needed in East Harlem. This is not what we need because we're getting stiffed. We need more low-income housing, not this elusive, affordable housing that residents cannot afford, and which will mean more displacement, which will mean gentrification. I think a better option would be to look into community land trusts, which have been proven in New York City as well as other states, especially when it comes to public land. We're not going to get enough apartments through this rezoning because the AMI is not for the zip code. A rezoning would also bring a lot of congestion to an area that's already congested. I had to wait for 10 minutes on the bus at a traffic light because of all the construction that is already happening on 126 between 2nd and Lex. The amount of construction is already a lot. With more people and more development in the neighborhood, it will just be too much. Not to mention that there's not enough parking already. And you want to bring more people, more vehicles, where will people park their cars? I want to see the people who grew up here and who have been living here still have a place in East Harlem, as well as their children who are trying to move back. Basically, we don't need a rezoning. We need actual low-income housing. We can't afford these affordable rents right now, and the rezoning is not offering us enough housing for low-income residents to stay in East Harlem. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. First of all, thank you for your service on Board 11. I was on my board. I know how much work is involved. The issue that is so challenging is how do you stop the gentrification for the private owners, which they do, and at the same time, I agree with you, try to find a way for all public land to stay in the public. So I'm just wondering, in your role on the board, have some of those discussions been discussed? How do you really preserve the land that is owned by the private sector, which is very challenging? And then I agree with you, every public land should be done in a way that maintains it, land trust or anything else, in perpetuity for low income. So I'm just wondering, do you have some of those discussions on the community board?
None of my committees, I've never heard any of my committees actually discussing that. I'm sure some of the other ones have that I'm not on, because some of the other ones actually deal with, like housing and, stuff like that. But PTH has some ideas on what we can do, the community land trust and other ideas on stuff.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Vivica Diaz.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please vote no against this rezoning. I'm asking you to please say no to this rezoning. In weighing out opportunity, please say no to this rezoning. I remember growing up and nobody would pass 96th Street. And of course, many things have changed, and now everybody wants to live uptown.
That's right.
And we are, I think, the area that has the most housing projects. Why we were all put in one location, that's history. But please say no to the rezoning. And I know that it's hard because people do get displaced. Families, it's like the Industrial Revolution. It didn't stop, it keeps going. And the one thing that gets affected the most are people. But it takes those people to live in those apartments or the rezoning. So again, I'm saying, please say no to the rezoning.
Thank you very much.
Ray Tirado.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Ray Tirado. I lived in this neighborhood all my life. Actually, I'm lucky and fortunate enough that I actually lived in the same apartment for 55 years. That being said, I am being pushed out. But the reason I'm here tonight is the question, who? Who benefits from this rezoning? Is it the residents? I don't think so. Who are being displaced and harassed by landlords by the week, by the month, by the year. We in the Barrio have been facing a rough situation here. This is a property that we had most of our lives and we grew up with. Now, right now, we can't even get good jobs. This community is lacking in good jobs. Now, we're going to build on public land. For me, I'm a union worker. I also represent CVH and I also represent the Barrio. So I'm wearing 3 hats here today. And I'm about to retire. And I would love to stay here and retire because this is my home. But you have to say no to rezoning and build low-income housing in these public lands that it's our land. We pay taxes for this. This is our land. We can't just give it away and not get nothing back. So the landlords right now, they're nitpicking from the East Harlem plan and they're taking things that satisfies them. It doesn't satisfy the community. I've been in this visioning session for about a year and a half since it began. And I'm hearing the community. I'm hearing the Barrio. And they're saying, no. We're getting pushed out. If you think that the little scare that we had with Sohar is a past history, it isn't. Once we're out of here, Harlem is out the picture. Sohar, here we come. So we got to preserve our people here. We got to build lower affordability. And I don't want to forget NYCHA. We need to fix NYCHA also. And with that being said, I knew I was going to run out of time, and I appreciate you, not pushing me out the way everybody else does. Don't want to mention the community board. But we don't want this to be like the reverse of the Robin Hood effect, where the rich is taken from the poor and given to the rich. This is something that President 45 will be proud of. This shouldn't be the model for the Barrio. And I appreciate your time, and thank you.
And thank you for fighting for your building, too.
Sorry, we need to just come by here and...
Thank you very much. Those signs are good, but I like that one over there with the eyes, just so you know.
Okay, the next 3 witnesses, Darlene Jackson can come up to the mic, and then Kimberly Libman and Nilsa Arama.
Sorry, I had no idea I was going to come up this early. Oh my goodness.
No, you're fine. You're good.
So my name is Darlene Jackson, and I'm really here to speak more about to the community at large. I had no clue of what community boards even what it consists of prior to my appointment there, and I kind of felt like robbed of my civic engagement that I could have contributed 20 years in my own community. And so I'm just here to tell everyone here to really encourage you guys to not only just come to the full board meetings. It's very important that you guys are really involved in the whole entire process of the ULUP, especially the ULUP process, which I'm really becoming familiar with it now myself. But there's public meetings that you can have this dialogue with. You could make sure that you demand your voice is heard and part of the decision-making process. Not just show up in your monthly meetings. And I'm actually happy to see everybody here at this public hearing, because I was like hoping like it doesn't stop at the community board level. Like you guys need to go through all the way to city planning and the city council where they have the final vote. But I also wanted to talk to the panel that you really need to like build have capacity building on community boards and use that space to empower the people to get civilly involved in the very issues that impact them every day. And I know you guys also offer trainings as well, but those trainings on land use specifically could be beneficial to the people who actually live and work in East Harlem as well. Okay.
No, we're definitely happy to take your recommendation and other ideas of other trainings that you think we should be doing. Our office has been very aggressive to not only promote trainings for community board members, but to all residents and to different bodies that we have appointments to. And the trainings include everything from land use, as you mentioned, but about landmarking as well, which is very important. And also parliamentary procedures or Robert's Rules of Order, or effective resolution writing so city agencies know exactly clearly what community boards resolve them to do. So again, we'll take your recommendation to do more trainings, and from anyone. If you feel that the 16 or 17 trainings we currently have are not enough, or we should do them more often, we will. And if there's another topic that we should be doing, we're happy to do that. We feel that capacity building at the community board level and providing the technical assistance and supports is something that's critical. So we'll be happy to do that.
Let's start with ethics.
Where people are coming even from other boroughs for our training, so all suggestions are welcome. All right, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Excuse me, my name is Dr. Kimberly Libman, and I'm the Deputy Director for Prevention and Community Development at the New York Academy of Medicine. For those of you who don't know, the Academy has been around since 1847, and we focus on advancing solutions to promote health for people in cities. We were appointed to the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan Steering Committee convened by City Council Speaker Melissa Mark Favorito, and specifically tasked with developing recommendations around health and aging as part of the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan. In that role as steering committee member, we also conducted a health impact assessment to provide information about the potential health effects of the plan's affordable housing and zoning recommendations. Our HIA found that the potential for residential displacement posed a threat to the health of the East Harlem community. To prepare for today's hearing, we also reviewed the public health chapter of the draft environmental impact study. In our assessment, the public health chapter of the draft environmental impact study does not address the health impacts of changes to what are commonly known as the broader determinants of health. These are things such as education, employment, discrimination, socioeconomic status, and of course, housing. We know that residential displacement can negatively impact health. Evidence shows that displacement can cause people to accept affordable but inadequate and unhealthy, substandard, poor quality housing. It can result in the disruption of important social support, erosion of social networks, and increased transportation costs for families. We know that some displaced residents will also become homeless, which in itself is linked to several negative health outcomes. And that the death rates for people who are homeless are several times higher than those are for the general population. Displacement can also lead to high levels of stress, which has been linked to chronic diseases, which are already quite prevalent in this neighborhood, including heart disease, hypertension, and diabetes. Regarding residential displacement, the draft environmental impact statement states that under the reasonable worst-case development scenario, the proposed rezoning could displace an estimated 27 residents, which is a dramatic underestimate. To conclude, we find that the draft environmental impact statement significantly underestimates the potential negative health impacts of the proposed rezoning to the East Harlem community, and therefore there are unidentified needs for mitigation around these impacts, and we would suggest voting no as it stands now.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of respect for the Academy.
Thank you.
Nilsa Arana, and if people could also, most people are testifying on the larger rezoning, but if you could say if you're testifying on the larger rezoning or the East 111th Street rezoning or both together, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nilsa Arana. I'm a community resident, been born and raised here for 56 years. Have lived in NYCHA. I'm also a community board 11 member, part of the rezoning task force as well. Just as I'm sitting here, and this is all my comments alone as a resident, I have very great concerns that the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan was not adhered to when looking at the rezoning and drawing up this proposed rezoning plan. I thought that that is not a beneficial way to look at a resource that was driven by the community, and I think that does a disservice to this community as well. There's several issues that I'm just going to bullet point, and then maybe because I want them to go on the record, I don't have prepared remarks. I'm concerned about in this neighborhood warehouse buildings, and there is no penalties to these private owners who have held these buildings, warehouse for years and years and years. With the glut and with the lack of housing in East Harlem, to have these buildings just shut it and just have commercial space, it's a crime and it's a shame, and the city has never addressed that. I believe in affordable housing. I live in one of the last Mitchell Lamas. If I didn't live there, I couldn't afford to live there. I haven't gotten a raise, as every person usually expects a raise every year. With economies, you're lucky you have a job, right? And so we're grateful that we're all working, but we also want to raise a family in East Harlem. If you've lived here, you've grown here, right? So affordable housing for who? And I think that MIH, while it tries to build in some affordability, it's not nearly enough for our zip codes, right? Shelters. We have a large amount of shelters here in East Harlem. There is no housing being built for displaced people in shelters. People are traveling from boroughs to keep their kids in the schools they've become familiar with. When they get shutted out of the shelter, they have to go somewhere else. We need our public spaces to be looked at for permanent affordability. We need landlords who will take vouchers. We need to use our money creatively so that we can create affordable housing. There are no affordable rental spaces for community-based organizations that give services to this community. The East Harlem Multi-Service Center is one of the last places where community organizations can get offices for $26 a square foot. Where do you find that in East Harlem? So I think that is important, that we're not looking at where our community-based not-for-profits will be going. We're not developing enough programs for construction jobs. It's not enough to get someone into a level of a job, entry level. We need to actually give training that will empower them to continue. We are, as part of the housing, I was the vice chair of housing, we are looking at preservation and community land trust, and I'm proud to say that I'm the secretary of the East Harlem El Barrio Land Trust that is working towards creating a new model. And one last thing, because I have more, but we're not going to continue going there. It is important that we look to see how we can change the federal AMI levels. That was done at a time when it included Westchester and other areas in order to get affordability in those areas. That is no longer applicable to us. And what it's giving is it's giving a false impression that the income here is higher than it is for the community residents. The environmental impact statement is also incorrect. It does not count people that are doubled into apartments. To say that 27 people in this community will be displaced, it's obviously wrong.
Yep, I agree. Thank you very much.
Pilar de Jesus, Mafusar Rahman, and Federico Colon.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm coming not to say anything new. Gail, I respect you very much. You're one of the very few politicians
I know your
respect.
name. Give the name again. I know your name. I give you.
Pilar de Jesus. Problema, la problema. And Gail, I'm just here, because I don't know how many of my testimonies you've heard, but I'm here to just tell you no. We don't want it. No with no conditions. No, 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 no. I said this at the CB11 meeting, and I'm really still trying to understand what's the purpose of the board, because I hear 99 or 99% of the board, people from the act that live in the community who are being affected, saying no. And they don't want conditions. We're telling you no. And still,
They voted no with conditions. So I don't know who they listened to. It clearly wasn't the 98% of people that came to the mic and said no with no conditions. They didn't hear me after all of my yelling and all the, the problema. They didn't hear me. I've lived here all my life. We don't want it. We need to come back to the table, not a steering committee that was put together by someone who's in bed with the developers, the speaker. We didn't need that. We need the actual community. We're telling you no. I'm telling you as a resident who's been here 36 years and seen the effects on my small businesses and on my people who live, my neighbors. I'm telling you as a person who's in housing court literally 90% of the time fighting against the displacement that's happening, especially in the communities of color that are being rezoned. It's not fun. It's not fun dealing with HPD. It's not fun dealing with the judges that don't understand what's going on with these tenants. If we really want to address the problem, let's get to the root of it. You guys keep addressing, the cure. You're forgetting the cause. The cause. Let's get to that, and then we can start addressing, our housing needs. You have a large population of rent-stabilized apartments that are being jeopardized because so many landlords are greedy, and you have your Tolodanos, your Cromans, you have all of those, and they hold a large stock of those rent-stabilized apartments.
So what would you do with that in terms of a preservation strategy, whether it would be the issue like in the Clinton Special District, no harassment? What would you do? Because I am concerned about the preservation aspect.
I think we need to we got to see how our agencies, one of the frustrations I have with HPD, especially when I'm going to court to bring a landlord to court because he doesn't think that a tenant not having gas for a year is, no, we're changing the system. I don't know how HPD does a lot of these inspections or how they, issue violations and how they clear them. Because I can go into an apartment and clearly the tenant's ceiling is falling, but yet when I go to the website, it's not reported. So let's try to fix that first, the agency, and work and try to build tougher laws against these landlords that are doing a lot of undercover things with the banks like Signature Bank, which is one of the biggest banks that funds predatory equity. Let's address that, and then we can talk about building. And then if you really do want to build and save the crisis, stop building in communities of color. Thank you. I don't know why it has to be here.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you.
If we could ask people in the back with the signs to please lower them a bit because the cameras, the live streaming can't pick up, you're blocking the people who are testifying. Thank you. Mahfouzar Rahman.
So do I just submit it to here or?
If you have copies, you can pass them up.
Yeah, or just take some time.
Thanks. That's all right. You can give us.
We can get them. Thank you. I passed a law that says 16 and 17-year-olds can be on community boards, and here's an example. I want you to know. We're very proud of them.
Thank you, Gail. Hello. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Mahfouzar Rahman. I'm born and raised in East Harlem. I attended school here. I'm really civically wild around here, I guess. And I'm also on CB11 on Youth and Education and Vice Chair for Health. And I'm speaking for myself and on both of the projects. I'd like to thank Ahmed Trigani and George James for helping me throughout this process. The East Harlem Neighborhood Plan was a bold concept and was developed from us in February and was submitted to DCP in 2016. However, the draft IECs given to us was more or less, in my opinion, just chicken scratch, as they more or less disregarded a lot of the recommendations from the committee. I think someone mentioned earlier, but within the public health section, it says it would not create a significant health impact, but in fact it will. This will create a significant health impact or even a crisis in the near future. We had previously a homeless forum and most recently a NYCHA forum happening, and throughout our process we had collaborated with the Academy of Medicine to create the impact of gentrification in health studies, and one of the significant studies, one of the significant findings was that gentrification is not adequately recognized as a public health. Local policy does not recognize health impact upon individuals and community. Stakeholders and those in it do not consider the health impact, and more or less it would attribute to chronic stress throughout, and more or less
Keep going, you're fine.
Okay. Financial self-interest by the city governments and real estate developers is prioritized over participatory strategies such as this. I would urge you, Madam President, to finesse the awesome powers as borough president. I know recently the sanitation garage was given the green light for some reason, so it's really helping me think more creatively as how we can work about it. I'm not in support of rezoning, however, since it's like 90 blocks, this is significant.
Yeah, 96.
I know Midtown is more or less losing it over one block, a few blocks, but this is significant and will adversely impact. And I would also like to call on the Borough Board of Manhattan, Bronx, and Queens to more or less also get involved in this process.
Why don't you just stick with Manhattan? It's okay. Thank you.
Okay, but what's it called? It's
you got to wrap up.
The AMI levels here are not out of New York City, are not out of Manhattan, and I'll just strongly encourage you no to the rezoning estimate from DCPT. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. He works so hard.
Good evening, Madam Chair. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, ma'am. Aldrin, Lucille, Mr. Caras. When you live long enough and you start getting gray like I do, you forget things, but you also live through a lifetime of changes. I remember when we fought the Pathmark, even though we wanted fresh products here, but we knew that the Pathmark was going to come in. They make their profits, they lower their prices, they eliminate some of the smaller supermarkets, and for 20, 30 years, they just take over the food chain. And then it gets ready for the landlords to come in and buy the big boxes of supermarket and then do high development. That happens a while back, and I was in East Harlem when that happened, and I was fighting very hard against them, which I love, and I'm going to give a little history, and I don't know when I have a lot of time. Alice Carnegie, who was from the East Harlem Triangle, she died.
We knew Alice.
You know Alice. We fought different side of the issues, but we always did the right thing by the community. Metropolitan Hospital, they wanted to privatize it. We stopped them. When they brought Julia de Burgos and they wanted to bring homeless shelters and other programs that were not for this community, we fought for a cultural center. Avant Caribe was supposed to be one of the sites that was supposed to be developed, if I'm not mistaken, on that particular site that they're talking about. It had museums, I think it had like 30 or 40%, if I'm not mistaken, low income. Not affordable. Nobody can afford affordable anymore. We are all a paycheck or two paychecks for being homeless. If anybody here cannot relate to that, then I'm crazy. And some of the board members, I know they work very, very hard, but some of the heads of some of the board members or some of the committees, they don't always think things through. So I would like to bring back some of this issue back to the community, to the 99% that said no, and really work out a good formula that can work. I know on Land Use Committee, permits and disposition, you guys have the right to do this. But let's not be hesitant, let's not jump the gun and keep our people more and more of a less choices of housing. The clinics. I mean, believe me, not in my backyard. We have more clinics than anybody else in New York City, probably. We still do. You know, we're still fighting the 125th Street, hanging out. You see the police cars there. We did march. We did a lot of things. I will say no, but guys, they are usually committee boards are on advisory level. It's up to that vote that happens at the board president that will make the difference. Send it back home and let's get new leadership in that board and let's revisit the issue. I'm not stopping progress. Second Avenue subway is alive and well and is coming. Empowerment Zone never develop or anything that we can afford in East Harlem because they want to preserve East Harlem for the people with money. So it's been orchestrated over the last 20, 25 years. And I say, ma'am, with all due respect, and I'm sorry I took more time than the other speakers want to speak, please send it back to the people.
And thank you for your Section 3 advocacy and success. I just want to add that.
By the way, the best social program is a good paying job.
Exactly, I agree.
1% of the money that is spent in East Harlem leaves East Harlem. I mean, that stays in Harlem. In other communities, that $1 goes 10 times. So we have to create Section 3 jobs.
Thank you for Section 3. Thank you.
Term limits for community board members.
Jose Venegas.
Hi, my name is Jose Venegas. I'm a troublemaker. People don't agree with me sometimes because I like to speak the truth. Let's take gentrification.
Use the mic.
Let's take gentrification. Gentrification goes back to Ireland when the British practiced ethnic cleansing and got rid of the Irish, and they had to migrate. It caused millions of people to migrate, broke up families, and a lot of people died. The same thing is been happening here now. Those homeless shelters are modern-day concentration camps. I've been there, all over the city, right? People get murdered, they get mugged, etc., etc. I've been with Picture the Homeless. I like their plans. They make sense. But let's call a spade, all right? These banks are out of control. The real estate industry subsidized by the taxpayers, all right? Because the City Development Corporation issues bonds, and the city develops, and the developers get that money, and they develop for the rich, not the poor, all right? So calling a spade, let's make things clear. All right? Stop the ethnic cleansing of the city of New York. You have it in your power to do it if you want to. Let's stop warehousing apartments. That should be illegal. There's more apartments than people are in the streets. All right? Let's put rent control on commercial properties. All right? The data, anybody can get it. All you got to do is walk around, be alive, and think critically. And educate our students, our children, to think about health, which is nowhere in the curriculum. They eat junk food all over the place, all right? And how to handle money, so they can understand, going back to Hamilton, how the banks have been cheating the poor.
Okay.
All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Don't forget your glasses. Thank you.
Chantal Sparks, followed by George James.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Chantal Sparks, as just stated. I am here to offer the position of CB11. First off, I want to say that I'm an East Harlem resident, have been a resident of East Harlem for half my life. I recognize that I may look fairly young, but I'm a lot older than I seem, but I won't. I will have to deny that if I'm quoted on that. But in speaking in all seriousness, I am here, I serve I've served for the past year on CB11 board. I've served on the rezoning committee and also on land use committee. I am here to relay the position, or to relay to Madam Borough President that the city's plan for the rezoning in East Harlem has raised a multitude of issues for the board, which is what led to the position that the community board ultimately took. I won't list entirely every single concern that the community board had. We're actually submitting this as a written testimony, which I'll provide following my testimony here today. But I do want to highlight some of the recommendations that the community board made based on the concerns the community board had.
Thank you.
Some of which were a renewal of anti-displacement legal services contracts, specifically Tenant Rights Coalition, and we're asking, we see an opportunity to have to implement realistic benchmarks to determine the current housing law practitioners that enable thoughtful and effective group representation in order to harmonize rhetoric with reality and combating and or mitigating the effects of gentrification. As has been stated here by many of the East Harlem residents, there's a concern about displacement, and it's a genuine concern that the East Harlem residents have. And so we see this opportunity to recommend to the city to look closely at that issue, the issue of displacement of East Harlem residents. Additionally, one of the other concerns is HPD, which was also stated before, which I won't necessarily I won't reiterate, but it's definitely a concern, as well as one of the main issues is the need to use public land for the public, for the residents of East Harlem, and to ensure that public land is 100% affordable to those residents who actually reside in East Harlem, which include residents at the very low spectrum of the income bands. So again, the concerns raised by the city's proposal led to the board's recommendation, and we will be submitting a written testimony about those specific recommendations that we have, so in hopes that your office and ultimately the city council will vote in the way the community wishes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is George James. I'm a planner. I've worked with Community Board 11 over the years, but tonight I'm here speaking for myself. Fundamental to good planning is understanding both the costs and the benefits of a rezoning action like this. The environmental impact statement doesn't do a good job of that, largely because we are underestimating, I believe, we are underestimating the amount of growth that will happen because of the rezoning in three fundamental ways. First, we estimate new development sites. When we estimate it in EIS, we are ignoring rent-stabilized buildings. We are ignoring houses of worship. We are ignoring sales of air rights. Now, you know, Borough President, that development in New York often involves one of these three, if not more than one. Yet in the East Harlem rezoning, we're saying if you're one of those three things, you will not be redeveloped. And that is a fundamental underestimating of the reasonable worst case scenario. Second, as I've stated repeatedly, the multipliers used for student generation are now 17 years old in the manual. If we just plug in correct multipliers and use the reasonable worst case development scenario, we would disclose significant impacts on District 4 elementary schools, which are not in the EIS. Finally, there are many ULURP actions occurring in the district. 126th Street, National Black Theater, Lexington Gardens, 96th Street, in addition to this rezoning. By breaking them up into smaller chunks, we are segmenting the impacts so that if they were evaluated together, they would be significant, but individually, they are not. Taken together, we could be seriously underestimating the impacts of the rezoning. Now, the borough president, among others, included comments on the draft scope of work that could have addressed some of these issues, but these comments were largely ignored. We could have done a much better job of assessing the impacts of the rezoning, but the Department of City Planning chose not to do so, which was unfortunate and ironic. And just for the record, I don't take a position on the rezoning. I just advocating for better planning.
Thank you, that was excellent. Thank you, George, very much. You want?
The next, Salome Leon, Sandra Cruz, Kathy Pina, and Josefina Salazar.
They have,
and I believe we have, they're going to be accompanied by translators.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Mi nombre es Salomé León, represento Movimiento por Justicia del Barrio. Nosotros somos el pueblo humilde del barrio. Nosotros somos la comunidad de bajos ingresos del este de Harlem. Nosotros somos los inquilinos de largo término y de renta estabilizada. Nosotros, como comunidad del este de Harlem, rechazamos incondicionalmente el plan de rezonificación del alcalde Di Blasio. Y estamos aquí para pedirle a usted, Gale Brewer, como presidenta del condado de Manhattan, que haga lo mismo, recomendando que el plan destructivo del alcalde Di Blasio sea completamente desechado. Una recomendación suya de no con condiciones. Tampoco es aceptable porque es esencialmente una aprobación a cambio de algunos cambios cosméticos. Nosotros rechazamos el plan de vivienda lujosa del alcalde. Como hemos dicho antes, nosotros no queremos ninguna parte de su plan. Nosotros no queremos estacionamientos de carros o parques a cambio de este plan de vivienda lujosa. Nosotros no queremos ninguna migaja. Hay otros que están dispuestos a aceptar migajas a cambio del plan de vivienda, pero nosotros somos muy diferentes. La administración del alcalde Di Blasio, incluyendo su departamento de planificación de la ciudad y HPD, mienten. La administración del alcalde Di Blasio quiere excluir a las voces que representan el sector de nuestra comunidad que representamos. Igualmente usted, Gale Brewer, también nos ha excluido. Nosotros le hemos llamado y escrito a usted desde el 2015 para hablar sobre el plan de rezonificación del alcalde, pero usted nunca nos ha respondido. Usted, igual que el alcalde, quiere excluirnos a los más pobres del este de Harlem. Ustedes, igual que el alcalde, quieren excluir a las mujeres, hombres, ancianos, niñas y niños, que seríamos los más perjudicados por el plan de vivienda lujosa del alcalde Di Blasio. El alcalde dice que es un plan de vivienda de bajos ingresos, pero nosotros sabemos que eso no es verdad, porque la gran mayoría de los apartamentos será designada para gente rica. Estamos en contra del plan de vivienda lujosa del alcalde, porque es un plan que favorece a las grandes compañías y caseros ricos, y no a la gente sencilla y humilde que vive en nuestro querido barrio. Es por eso que REGNI apoya el plan de vivienda lujosa del alcalde. En lugar de imponer su plan de vivienda lujosa, el alcalde debería hacer algo para preservar la vivienda de apartamentos de renta estabilizada, que ya existe y en donde mucha gente pobre vive actualmente, pero que día tras día estamos a riesgo de ser desplazados, porque los malos caseros no hacen reparos, porque quieren desplazarnos. Aparte de eso, el Departamento de Vivienda HPD del alcalde Di Blasio falla en enforzar las leyes de vivienda para que estos malos caseros cumplan con esas leyes. Nosotros, como inquilinos de vivienda de renta estabilizada, hemos leído el plan de vivienda del este de Harlem que el Departamento de Vivienda de la ciudad HPD ha publicado recientemente. Y es claro que ese plan no hará nada efectivamente para asegurar que la vivienda de bajos ingresos que existe actualmente siga existiendo. Si el plan de vivienda lujosa del alcalde se convierte en ley, es más, ese nuevo plan de HPD favorece a los caseros y no a nosotros los inquilinos. Si en realidad quisiera la administración del alcalde Di Blasio preservar la vivienda de bajos ingresos que existe actualmente, implementaría nuestro plan de 10 puntos. Como comunidad, residentes del este de Harlem, nos reunimos a través de nuestra consulta del barrio. Consultas comunitarias a lo largo de un año, y durante este proceso los residentes del este de Harlem dijeron claramente que incondicionalmente rechazamos el plan de rezonificación que quiere imponer el alcalde de Blasio. También fue en estas reuniones comunitarias que nuestra comunidad hizo nuestro plan de 10 puntos para la administración de Blasio, para preservar la renta estabilizada. Nosotros exigimos que el plan de vivienda lujosa, el plan de rezonificación del alcalde de Blasio sea 100% y completamente desechado, y después de eso reemplazado por el plan de 10 puntos que fue hecho por los residentes del este de Harlem. El barrio no se vende. 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 Ok, el barrio no se vende. El barrio no se vende. All right. El barrio no se vende. Thank you very much. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brianna. I'm going to be translating what she said.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Salome Leon, and I represent Movement for Justice in El Barrio. We are the humble people of El Barrio. We are the low-income community of East Harlem. We are the long-term rent-stabilized tenants in East Harlem. We, as the community of the East Harlem that we are unconditionally against the mayor's rezoning plan, and we are here tonight to ask you, Manhattan Borough President Gale Brewer, to take the same position by recommending unconditionally that the mayor's destructive plan be entirely scrapped. A no vote with conditions is not acceptable because that is essentially an approval in exchange of something cosmetic changes. We are opposed to his luxury housing plan. As we have said before, we do not want any of his displacement plan. We also do not want parking lots or parks in exchange for his luxury housing plan. We do not want any crumbs. There are others that are willing to accept crumbs in exchange of the mayor's luxury housing plan. But we are very different. The administration of Mayor de Blasio, including his Department of City Plan and HPD, lies. Mayor de Blasio wants to exclude the voices of the sectors of the community that we, the most humble, represent. You, Gail, have excluded us. We have called you and written to you since 2015 to discuss the mayor's rezoning plan, but you have never responded to us. You, like the mayor, want to exclude the most impoverished of El Barrio. You, like the mayor, want to exclude us, the women, men, elderly, girls, women, and boys that would be the most impacted by Mayor de Blasio's luxury housing plan. The mayor says that it is an affordable housing plan, but we know that that's a lie, because the great majority of the apartment units will be designated for the rich people. We are 100% against the mayor's luxury housing plan because it's a plan that favors big developers and rich landlords. His plan in no way favors the simple and humble people that live in our beloved barrio. That is why the REBNY, the Real Estate Board of New York, supports the mayor's luxury housing plan. Instead of imposing his luxury housing plan, the mayor should do something to preserve the rent-stabilized housing that already exists and where many poor people currently live because after day, we are at risk of being displaced, because the bad landlords, tenants do not make repairs with the objective of displacing us. Mayor de Blasio's Department of Housing fails to enforce the housing laws to ensure that these bad landlords comply with the city's housing laws. We, tenants of rent-stabilized housing, have read the HPD's newly released East Harlem housing plan, and it's clear that the plan will not do nothing effective to ensure that the low-income housing that currently exists will continue to exist if Mayor de Blasio's luxury housing plan is approved. Furthermore, the new HPD plan benefits the landlords and not us, the tenants. If Mayor de Blasio truly wants to preserve the low-income housing that currently exists, we would implement our 10-point plan. As a community, we, the residents of East Harlem, held public community meetings as part of our community-driven consultations process, which lasts a year. Throughout this community consultation, East Harlem residents made clear that they are unconditionally against the plan that the mayor wants to impose. It was also throughout this community-wide meetings that the community developed our 10-point plan for the de Blasio administration to preserve rent-stabilized housing. We demand that the mayor's luxury housing plan, otherwise known as his rezoning plan, be 100% scrapped, and after that replaced with our 10-point plan that we developed by East Harlem residents. El Barrio is not for sale, it's to be loved and defended. El Barrio is not for sale, it's to be loved and defended. El Barrio is not for sale, it's to be loved and defended. El Barrio is not for sale, it's to be loved and defended. El Barrio is not for sale, it's to be loved and defended.
Thank you very much. And let me just say one thing. I didn't know you'd ask to meet with us. I meet with everybody. People know that, so we'll be glad to meet with you.
Okay. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Sandra Cruz, yo soy de miembro de Justicia por Movimiento del Barrio. Nosotros queremos que el plan de rezonificación del alcalde sea completamente desechado y reemplazado en su lugar con nuestro plan de 10 puntos. Queremos ser claros, no estamos dispuestos a aceptar el plan de rezonificación a cambio de nuestro plan de 10 puntos y por eso queremos que ustedes voten 100% en contra del plan de rezonificación, sin ninguna condición. Yo le voy a presentar el resumen de nuestro plan de 10 puntos para la administración del alcalde de Blasio. El plan se le ha enviado a usted, Gale Brewer, pidiéndole que se comunicara con nosotros para hablar sobre esto, pero usted nos ignoró. 1. Que establezcan supervisión independiente que vigile a HPD para toda la ciudad de Nueva York. 2. Establecer un nuevo programa de educación pública para que todos los inquilinos en la ciudad de Nueva York se den cuenta sobre la responsabilidad de HPD de asegurar los caseros cumplan con las leyes de vivienda de mantenimiento. 3. Caseros deben ser castigados inmediatamente cuando violan la ley en lugar de que duren meses en la corte. Mientras los inquilinos sufren las condiciones pésimas, estos caseros deben de recibir una multa inmediatamente por medio de un tribunal administrativo o por medio de inspectores que tengan un poder de dar multas por violaciones repetidas. 4. Cumplir con la responsabilidad de programas de reparos, de emergencia de HPD. Todos los caseros, no solamente en vez en cuando los inquilinos se organizan para exigir justicia, presionando a HPD, exponiéndolos ante los medios de comunicación para que hagan su trabajo. 5. Mejorar en proveer materiales en los idiomas necesarios para que los inquilinos quienes reciban inspecciones. 6. Para todas las emergencias inmediatas, especialmente cuando no tengamos calefacción y agua caliente. En el invierno, frío, HPD debe de cambiar cómo responde. Inspeccionar reparos y multas. Debe todo ser dado en 24 horas y no hacer que los inquilinos tengan que esperar semanas o meses como ocurre actualmente. 7. Establecer un programa para justicia de vivienda del estado del este de Harlem para la supervisión de HPD, que puede ser replicado en otras comunidades de bajos ingresos con problemas serios de vivienda. 8. Establecer supervisión de trabajo de HPD, hecho por la comunidad del East de Harlem. 9. Mejorar el proceso de hacer inspecciones, por ejemplo, que provean inspecciones las 24 horas del día, 7 días a la semana. Asegurar citas por adelantado para todas las inspecciones. 10. Mejorar el seguimiento garantizado de HPD. Llame a los inquilinos para averiguar si las violaciones han sido reparadas. En esto es todo.
Thank you very much. You again.
I am. Good evening. My name is Sandra Cruz, and I am a member of the Movement for Justice in El Barrio. We want the mayor rezoning plan completely scrapped, and in its place, we want our 10-point plan implemented. We want to be clear that we will not accept the rezoning plan in exchange for our 10-point plan. This is the reason we want you to vote 100% against the rezoning plan without any conditions. Now, I will present a brief summary of our 10-point plan for the de Blasio's administration. This plan was sent to you, Gale Brewer. We asked that you contact us to discuss it, but you ignored us. Number 1, provide true independent citywide oversight of HPD's performance. It is of the highest importance that enforcement mechanisms are put into place to ensure HPD's execution of these recommendations and their regulation duties. 2, mount a citywide public education initiative so that all tenants in New York City are aware of the HPD's responsibility to ensure that landlords comply with the housing law. Landlords must be punished immediately when they break the law instead of dragging it out in court for months and months while tenants suffer. These landlords should be fined immediately, either in an administrative tribunal or via inspectors who can ticket them on the spot of the repeated violation. Comply with the responsibilities of HPD's emergency repair program in all cases, not just occasionally or when HPD is embarrassed into action when tenants call the press and demand justice. 5, improve the quality of language access for tenants receiving inspections. 6, for all immediate emergencies, especially when we are without heat and hot water in the cold winter months, HPD should improve how they respond. Inspectors, repair, and fine should all be given within 24 hours of a violation instead of making tenants wait for weeks or months as often happens. 7, establish an East Harlem HPD housing justice program to oversee HPD that can serve as a pilot program to replicate in other low-income areas with serious housing problems. 8, establish community-based oversight of HPD's performance in East Harlem. 9, improve the inspection process. For example, provide inspections 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and so that appointments are given in advance of inspection. 10, improve follow-up. Guarantee HPD callbacks to tenants to find out if violations have been repaired. That is all.
Thank you very much. And like I said, we'd be glad to meet. I didn't know.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Josefina Salazar y soy miembro de Movimiento por Justicia del Barrio. Nuestra organización está compuesta de inquilinos que vivimos en el este de Harlem y luchamos por vivienda digna y en contra del desplazamiento. Nosotros, el pueblo humilde del barrio, estamos aquí esta noche en defensa de nuestra querida comunidad. Nosotros estamos 100% e incondicionalmente en contra del plan de vivienda lujosa del alcalde Blasio. El alcalde del Departamento de Planificación de la ciudad de HPD, la concejal Mal Viverito y usted, Gale Brewer, quieren excluir las voces del sector de la comunidad que nosotros los más humildes representamos. Ustedes lo único que buscan es imponer sus planes de rezonificación, es decir, sus planes de desplazamiento. A usted, Gale Brewer, le hemos entregado el plan de 10 puntos, le hemos escrito y llamado varias veces y usted nunca nos ha respondido. Nosotros le hemos llamado y tenemos pruebas de que le hemos mandado a escribir y nunca nos ha contestado. Nosotros no nos puede engañar, sabemos muy bien el papel de usted en seleccionar a los integrantes de la Junta Comunitaria 11. Esa gente que usted seleccionó no nos representa. Como lacayos políticos que son, esa gente del mes pasado votaron un no con condiciones. Un no con condiciones es esencialmente un voto a favor de la rezonificación a cambio de migajas. Nosotros, los residentes del este de Harlem de largo término y de renta estabilizada, pide el plan de rezonificación del alcalde que sea 100% desechado. Al parecer, la única meta de usted, Gale Brewer, es aparentar falsamente que usted escucha al pueblo del barrio para que al final de cuentas haga su reconocimiento a favor de la rezonificación del este de Harlem con una recomendación de un no con condiciones. Una vez le queremos recalcar que exigimos que por primera vez no siga usted excluyendo a los residentes del este de Harlem de largo término y de renta estabilizada. Muéstrenos usted que está dispuesta a cambiar de modo de ser y que escuche y respete al pueblo del este de Harlem con su plan de recomendación incondicionalmente al 100% en contra de la rezonificación del alcalde. Queremos un firme no. 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 Queremos un firme no.
Thank you very much.
I'm back.
You're back.
I'm back.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Josefina Salazar, and I am a member of Movement for Justice in Barrio. Our organization consists of East Harlem tenants, and we fight for dignified housing and against displacement. We, the humble people of East Harlem, are here tonight in defense of our beloved community. We are 100% and unconditionally against Mayor de Blasio's entire luxury housing plan. The mayor, his Department of City Planning, HPD, council member Melissa Mark-Viridito, and you, Gale Brewer, want to exclude the voices of the sectors of the community that we, the most humble, represent. The only thing you all seek is to impose our rezoning plans. In other words, you wish to impose our displacement plans. We have sent you, Gale, our 10-point plan. We have written to you and called you several times, and you have never responded. In that way, you have excluded us. You cannot deceive us. You cannot deceive us. We know of your role in selecting the members of Community Board 11. Those people that you have chosen do not represent us. As the political lackeys that we are, those people last month voted no with conditions. A vote of no with conditions is not acceptable because that is essentially a yes vote in exchange for crumbs. We, the long-term rent-stabilized residents of East Harlem, ask that the Mayor's rezoning plan be 100% scrapped. Apparently, your main objective, Gale Brewer, is to falsely appear as if you listen to the people of El Barrio and then make your recommendations in support of the rezoning of East Harlem by making a recommendation of no with conditions. Once more, we reiterate that we demand that for the first time, you do not exclude long-term rent-stabilized East Harlem tenants. Show us that you listen and respect the people of El Barrio by recommending unconditionally a 100% firm no against the mayor rezoning plan. We want a firm no vote. 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 We want a firm no vote.
Thank you very much. And I do want to say that the issue of the Community Board 11, a lot of folks work really hard on that board. We have about 100 people applying. People should apply for next year. We take that application very seriously. I just want to say.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Katy y soy miembro del Movimiento por Justicia del Barrio. Yo le voy a explicar algunas de las razones de por qué los residentes de Largo terminó de renta estabilizada de Harlem. Estamos en contra del plan de rezonificación. El alcalde quiere imponer su plan de vivienda lujosa que causará nuestro desplazamiento de nuestro querido barrio. El plan de rezonificación del alcalde va a hacer que los caseros nos presionen aún más, ya que van a querer más ganancias, lo que cual va a causar el desplazamiento secundario de inquilinos con renta estabilizada y bajos recursos. Nosotros, las personas de bajos recursos del barrio, no podremos pagar los apartamentos que van a ser construidos bajo el plan del alcalde, ni las unidades de 75 a 80% del costo del mercado, que son la gran mayoría, ni las 20 a 25% llamadas unidades asequibles, porque serán para las personas que ganan mucho más dinero que nosotros. Cuando el mercado se inunda con miles de nuevos apartamentos de lujo del alcalde, esto causará aumentos rápidos del alquiler en el este de Harlem, desplazando potencialmente a largo plazo a los residentes de bajos ingresos de unidades estabilizadas, al igual que lo que sucedió en el rezonamiento de otros vecindarios como Chelsea y Williamsburg. Si este plan se promulga, nuestros negocios locales y vendedores ambulantes serán desplazados y trabajadores perderán su sustento, ya que los nuevos inquilinos de lujo demandan tiendas y amenidades de lujo. Ya no vamos a poder comprar en nuestras tiendas de nuestra comunidad. El plan del alcalde va a destruir a las bellas culturas que hacen que el este de Harlem sea el barrio, reemplazándola con una cultura de dinero. Nosotros exigimos que usted nos escuche y haga que los residentes de este de Harlem piden. Por eso estamos aquí, para pedir que su recomendación sea 100% y sin condiciones en contra del plan de resignificación del alcalde. Una recomendación de no con condiciones tampoco sería aceptable, porque sería rezonificación a cambio de algunos cambios cosméticos. Queremos que este plan destructivo sea completamente desechado. Continuamos luchando por nuestra querida comunidad porque el barrio no se vende, se ama y se defiende. El barrio no se vende, se ama y se defiende. El barrio no se vende, se ama y se defiende. El barrio no se vende, se ama y se defiende.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Kathy, and I am a member of Movement for Justice in el Barrio. I'm going to explain to you some of the reasons why East Harlem long-term stabilized residents are against the rezoning plan. The mayor wants to impose his luxury housing plan, which will cause our displacement for our beloved Barrio. Our greedy landlords already use illegally and underhanded means to try to displace us. They rent-stabilize tenants and permanently remove our homes from the roles of rent stabilization with the mayor's massive upzoning plan. The pressure will drastically increase because landlords will make to rank and even more profits, leading to secondary displacement of long-term, low-income, rent-stabilized tenants. We, the low-income people of El Barrio, cannot afford any of the new apartments that will be built under the mayor plan. Neither the 75 to 80% market rate units, which are the vast majority, nor the 20-25% so-called affordable units for people who make more money than us. When the market is flooded with the mayor's thousands of new luxury units, this will cause rapid rent increases in East Harlem, potentially displacing long-term, low-income residents for our rent-stabilized units, just like what happened in the rezoning of others hot markets like Chelsea and Williamsburg. If this plan is enacted, our local businesses and street vendors will be displaced and workers will lose their livelihood as new luxury tenants demand luxury stores and elements. We will not be able to afford shops at our stores in our community. The mayor's plan will destroy the beautiful cultures that make East Harlem be El Barrio, by replacing it with a culture of money. We demand that you listen to us by doing what East Harlem residents want. That is why we are here to ask that your recommendation by 100% and unconditionally against the mayor's rezoning plan. A recommendation of no with conditions is also not acceptable because that is essentially a recommendation in such of support of rezoning in exchange for cosmetic changes. We will continue fighting for our beloved community because El Barrio is not for sale, it is to be loved and defended. El Barrio is not for sale, it is to be loved and